Hello and welcome back to Season 4 of the M is for Mama podcast. I'm your host, Abby Halberstadt, happy wife, mama to 10, Bible-believing Christian, and I kind of can't believe that I just said the words Season 4, but here we are. And I'm excited to kick this season off with a fan favorite guest, my dear friend, Jennifer Flanders. We are going to chat about all things village, how to be a village, how to have a village, and how to rely on the Lord if you don't have it right now. I think you're going to love this conversation, but before we dive in, I want to highlight our podcast sponsor, Voteberg Music Academy. As the school year gets back into the swing of things, whether you're a traditional school mom or a homeschool mom, you can take one thing off your plate by not having to leave the house for music lessons. Voteberg lets you share lessons between siblings, so it is so much more affordable than private lessons, and you don't have to spend money on gas or spend time on the road. Your kids will be motivated to learn from the moment they unbox their instrument because Voteberg has a proven success path that includes cash prizes, fun competitions, and access to an instructor. You don't have to wait a week to get feedback on whether you're doing anything wrong. They even have live coaching calls and achievement badges that are mailed right to your front door. And what kid doesn't love Happy Mail? If that sounds like a great fit for your family, you can use the code MSForMama25 for 25% off each month that you're enrolled. And your kids can learn how to play music at home along with thousands of other like-minded families at VotebergMusicAcademy.com. I also want to tell you about a brand new podcast sponsor, Fledgling Bags. A sweet mama reached out to me and told me about this amazing sounding diaper bag and beyond, because it's not just for a diaper bag setup. They're backpacks that have incredible compartmentalization that you can customize for your needs depending on the age of your child. 8 of my children took these backpacks to Europe and we absolutely loved them. We were able to section them off so that we could put snacks in the top for the airplane, little change of clothes and shoes in the bottom, blanket and book in the back with headphones or a tablet or anything like that. They worked perfectly for us. They held up super well and they have very high quality construction and materials. If that sounds like something that would work well for your little one or even beyond, because my kids were using them up to age 15, you can check these awesome bags out at fledglingbags.com and use the code Abby10 for 10% off at checkout. And now, without further ado, we are going to dive into my conversation with my good friend, Jennifer. Hey friends, we are back for season 4. I can't believe I'm saying that, of the M is for Mama podcast. And I have one of the favorite guests, one of my favorite people, and the fan favorite guests back on the show to kick off this season. My friend Jennifer Flanders is here. And we are going to chat about a topic that I feel like is coming up all over my feed and in my DMs and in my emails. But first, just thanks for being here, Jennifer.
I'm happy to be here, Abby.
I know that everybody listening is happy to have you because every time you come on, I think this is your 3rd time.
Yes.
I get all kinds of emails and comments and YouTube comments and feedback that like, oh, have her on again. She's so great.
Oh, that's sweet. I appreciate that.
It's very true. So I'll kind of set up what we're talking about today because it's something that I'm seeing in Instagram reels, social media posts, articles, BuzzFeed. You know, I get emails about this and DMs about this. And it's this idea of, does it really take a village to raise a child or children, to manage a family well? And the assertion, I worded it in a question, does it really? The assertion is that it does. Like the assumption, and I think Hillary Clinton was one of the people that kind of popularized this phrase, it takes a village. Hillary Clinton is not one of my role models.
No. And it kind of made me nervous to hear her say it because I wondered what kind of responsibility she was going to try to take off my shoulders and put on the state.
Right. Okay. So expound on that a little bit, because before we even pressed record on this, you were talking about the fact that you're not a huge fan of that phrase, it takes a village, simply because the assumption is that the village is benign or has your best interests at heart, but that's not necessarily true.
Well, yeah, I think it's nuanced because, when we were growing up, I don't know about you, but our neighbors really all did look out for one another, and we knew each other's phone numbers. And if I got stuck on the roof like I did one time, because I climbed up on the roof and my next door neighbor saw me out there, and I wanted him to just let me jump into his arms and have him catch me. But he said, no, let me help you, put your foot on the fence. If you got up, you can get down. And neighbors would call my mom if they saw me getting into mischief, and they were all supportive of my parents' authority in my life to make the rules and enforce them. And I don't think that that's the case these days. I think that rather than coming alongside to help the parents, that a lot of times people that are saying, oh, it takes a village, and wanting to be that village want to dictate or maybe even usurp or undermine the parents' authority. They want to, call CPS if you don't follow the vaccine schedule, or, you know, um, accuse you of bigotry if you don't take your kids to the drag queen story hour, and that kind of thing.
Right.
There's lots of. It's not a homogenous society where we were all pretty much on the same page as to what child training entailed, and I just it makes me nervous to hear people talk about. Yeah, I want to be part of your village and to determine how you raise your children.
Yeah. Almost it takes a village as a form of social activism.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah. I think that there are plenty of people out there that are thinking, oh, yeah, that concerns me too. I think there's a lot of young moms probably listening that are thinking, oh, my brain never went there.
Yes. Uh-huh.
I just think of it as it sure would be nice to have some support,
Yes.
to have somebody come alongside me during postpartum, or to give me, their wisdom and their experience with toddlers, or to help me not to dread the teen years so much,
Yes.
and things like that.
Well, I do think that's a biblical thing. I mean, older women, you and I
Titus 2,
both are
yeah.
in that group now, are instructed to teach younger women how to love their children and sort of respect their husband and be keepers at home. And so there is a role for that, certainly. But I think your question was, are we able to parent without the village?
Yeah, I do feel like the idea, certainly I'm with you on that. It makes me a little nervous if a politician is touting this idea that kind of, let us just make your lives a little easier by taking this burden off your hands
Yes.
of all of this child rearing. And certainly it makes me nervous from a personal perspective of like, man, I put a lot of time being pregnant and birthing and
Yes.
nursing these babies. I'm not interested in not being the primary
Yes.
influence.
Handing them over to somebody else.
Handing them over.
Yes.
But also it makes me nervous, if we're using that phrase, or it gives me pause from a scriptural perspective, because I can't find any support for an agency, a neighbor, a government, or even another family member that's not the primary parent of my children being the one that's charged with their keep, care, training,
Yes.
and instruction in the Lord.
Yes, that is true. I mean, I've never seen it either. You read, teach your children as you walk along the way, and sit in your house and lie down and rise up. That was the charge given to parents. That's the responsibility of parents. Certainly, God does bring others into our life. I mean, each of us, have people speak and pour into our lives,
Yeah.
and our children are going to be no different. He'll sometimes give mentors and teachers and coaches that have a lot of impact, but those people are not given the primary responsibility of raising the children.
Right. Well, and I think is it Ecclesiastes? I'll have to look up the actual reference, but it's, two are better than one, for if one
Yes.
falls down, the other can be
Yes.
there to lift them up. I think in the case of parents, if you have an invested mom and dad, you already have those two.
Yes. Yes.
And if someone is already bristling like this idea of like, oh, you're just wanting to retreat into your silo and be this nuclear family unit where you're the only one that has any influence on your children, it's just you and your husband and your children against the world.
Yes.
That's not what we're talking about.
That is, I mean, that is our ideal, is to have both parents, but
Right,
it's
that
not
part.
always the case because of death, divorce, distance. Some moms are raising their kids alone while their husbands are deployed, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Sometimes the woman's deployed and dad's at home trying to go it alone. So not
just
everybody has that ideal.
Lack of being on the same page.
Yes.
I get a lot of DMs from moms that are feeling pretty discouraged because they don't feel like the support is there from their husbands. And I think there's probably a twofold and possibly an entire episode to do there on whether that's because they have bought into a mindset that is kind of like, this is what you should be doing, mom, and your
Yes.
husband's not on board, so he's not,
Yes.
quote, supporting you.
Yes.
And it's not stuff that's found in scripture that he should support.
Yes.
But there are instances where the best I can tell from a DM, because I don't know this person and I don't actually like do life beside them, that it is a mom who is wanting to follow God's word and is struggling with feeling like she's kind of the primary parent, the primary everything, with a husband that's maybe coasting. And that, I have a whole episode on contentment with Tilly Dillahay where we kind of talk about this idea of like, we're still called to be faithful to the Lord, even when that's the case.
Yes.
But talk to me a little bit about the idea that's going to be more what the young moms are thinking about when it takes a village, when they're thinking like, how can I be expected to do this well if I don't have a support system in place? Because some people just don't, or at least they don't right now.
Yes.
Maybe talk to it from your personal experience.
Well, we've discussed in the past that you and I both had mothers that worked full time when our children were little. So they helped as much as they could. My mom fed us on the weekends. We'd come over to her house Sunday afternoon and have Sunday dinner every week. And my dad would watch the kids, and while mom and I went garage sale shopping, because that is how we did everything when we were newly married. We were on a shoestring budget, and everything we owned came from garage sales. And so we would go out once a week with a list and hunt for what we needed. So there were things, and I don't want to minimize what was contributed by anybody into the lives of my children. But by the time my oldest was 9 and I was expecting number 6, and I have a total of 12, we moved away from home. We were 99 miles from our front door to my mom's front door. And so even that little bit was not able to continue, even what, and I say little bit, it was a lot. Mom was so good to do that, and dad too, while he was alive.
Right. But it's not necessarily, it's not giving you a break during the day on Monday through Friday or Saturday.
And my husband had a monstrous schedule for some of those years.
Yeah, talk a little bit about what he does.
120 hours a week.
Yeah, wow.
So it did seem like single parenting for a section of his schooling and training in medical school. Actually, medical school wasn't nearly as bad as the first year after he graduated. His internship year was really, really difficult. But we survived. And the reason we survived is because God is faithful, and he gave me what I needed. And if you know him, he will give you what you need in whatever season you're in, whatever age kids you have. And sometimes that is bringing alongside Titus 2 moms. A lot of times the Titus 2 moms that spoke into my life were not physical one-on-one moms. It was books that I read. And that's where I got a lot of encouragement, was reading the books of wise women that encouraged and trained others in loving their husbands, loving their children, and being keepers at home, as Titus 2 tells us to do. So that was very helpful. And then really, a lot of it, I think, was not pursuing what everybody else in my soccer mom circles felt was necessary for raising a well-adjusted child. We really did not get involved in sports beyond the little 6-week sessions of homeschool sports, because that ate into the little time that we did have with my husband at home. And that was priority for us, was to have that family together as often as we could, especially since he worked so many 24-hour shifts. So,
yeah. I love that because I think that one of the things that's happening is that younger moms are romanticizing a bygone era when they imagine that everyone sang Kumbaya together. I'm not mocking this, by the way, but there's this kind of almost this I'm going to give my child a 90s childhood. I've got to, all the neighbors are going to gather and they're going to have a barbecue and they're going to watch my kids. And I'm not going to be as stressed about, taking
Yes.
care of them. And someone's going to come in to do my laundry and someone's going to bring me a meal once a week. And my mom's going to be available. And it's going to be one big happy community. And you and I are not so different in age, but you are farther ahead than I am. And you have full adult children. How old is your oldest?
38.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so closer to my age than not. And yet you're still saying you lived in that bygone era in some people's brains, especially for 20-year-old moms now. And you're still saying, like, I didn't have tons of in-person people pouring into me. That would be nice. I really think that we are both agreeing that ideally everybody has a mentor and multiple moms come along and share the load and to do life with and have play dates with and to be encouraged by. But what I've found often is that, as ideal as that sounds, and maybe this is just kind of a different direction to go with this, but I cannot constantly be in community with other people and get all my work done at home.
Yes, that is true. I've found that to be the case myself. And I've had moms say, how in the world do you do this without a lot of friends? Like, I would go crazy. But no, I maybe it's just the way I'm wired. I get that felt. What also is because I have a husband that talks to me. My husband's very verbal, so
Yes, he is.
He is my best friend, and so I do get that communication that some women with a less communicative husband would be really hungering for. But yes, I've totally gone off track now. What was the question?
Oh, no, it's fine. I was just saying, like, I can't necessarily like be at constant play dates and be in the constant community.
No, you do have to do the actual homeschooling means that you do have to be home sometimes, and raising children means that even if you had all those people pouring into you, the temptation might be to abdicate your responsibility and just let them handle it. And that is not good for your children or for you. I mean, we grow a lot raising our children. God teaches us so much raising our children. And we come to appreciate his watch care over us when we are charged with watching over and caring for the next generation. I'm thankful that I didn't have somebody there constantly. And moving away when my oldest was 9, and we didn't have a lot of people here. Not really. I mean, there was one family that had moved from Dallas that we knew in Tyler when we moved here. And I guess there was one, so maybe 2 people we knew in Tyler when we moved. But they had their lives and we had our life, and we had to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah. I think that is such a simple yet wise phrase. You have to figure out how to make it work for your family, for where you live. I actually have gotten several messages recently from moms who are like, here's my circumstances. Here's all my limitations. How do I have this thing that doesn't really fit into those circumstances and limitations go?
Yeah.
Like almost like a chat GPT request.
Wow.
Like let me feed the information in and then you give me the solution. But so sometimes I feel a little bit silly always coming back with, well, pray for contentment in your circumstances, while they don't change. Yeah. Pray for the Lord's will to be done. And if it be his will that they do change, if there's a move in your future or that the Lord would bring along someone, I had one primary friendship for about 10 years, and it was a hard friendship, and it ended in a breakup that was really hard. I'm still grateful for aspects of that friendship for me and for my children, because she had children the same age as mine. But I prayed for kindred spirit support and friendship that whole time.
Yes.
And have so much more of a village now than I did then, even with someone that was close in age and doing similar life things, as far as the encouragement, verbal encouragement and lack of competition and all those things. But yet and Jennifer and I are such good friends. And I've always said I consider you a mentor, but like also peer and friend. And I'm so grateful for you in my life. But like, and you actually go to my church now.
Yes. I'm happy about
which
that.
is a new development.
Yes.
But other than seeing you on Sunday, like how often do we get to hang out?
Not very often anymore.
Right.
Yes.
We had a homeschool co-op that we would see each other.
That was actually where we first got to know each other, was the homeschool co-op.
And so there are just sometimes some circumstances that throw you into that community and that village, so to speak, for a period of time. But a lot of times they don't last forever.
No.
And one thing that I feel like I want to encourage or push back on, or whatever the right phrase is we have to be really careful not to put our hope in the village or the break or the support with the idea that we're not going to make it in parenting without it.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. Well, part of what you just said about praying for things to change if they need to change, but realizing that they might not. One thing that will change is your children. Their ages are not going to stay the same. Their level of competency is not going to stay the same. That is constantly changing. And so even if you're really in a hard season right now, it is not going to last forever. Yeah. And then the other question was, you just asked me one. But
what was it? Just the idea that you can't, like you're not going to make it. You know? And then
that you're not going to make it if you don't have a break. Well, I guess probably what I would say there is that God has promised to supply all of our needs. And if you truly need a break, then God will orchestrate a break for you. But otherwise, then that may be a deep desire and one that you can pray for, but you can also know that he is faithful to carry you through those difficult times. And he may be more concerned with the character that is going to develop by you not having a break than what advantages you'd get from having one.
Right. I wrote a post on social media that was basically saying that it was like a mom that was kind of saying something like, I really feel like I need a week away from my kids. Like that's and I don't know, like the heart motivations of that. Because I had so many moms come in and say, like, a week with no laundry or a week with not thinking about meal planning sounds great. I don't want to be away from my children, but like the things that feel like the weight's on you all the time, if that could be lifted, that would be great. But the point that I ended up making was that we sometimes convince ourselves if only our circumstances could shift, we could be godlier.
Yes. Like and I could be patient if they didn't try my patience so much. You know? Yes.
But I have often found that if that break comes along, that I am not more patient after the break.
Yes.
If my husband and I have gotten to go away for a couple of nights on an anniversary trip, I don't come back just, Mary Poppins and just, crisp efficiency and cool as a cucumber and never, in fact, sometimes you walk back in and you're like, it hits you like a ton of bricks. There's messes everywhere and you weren't there to help them clean it up. And I know that you have only just, like, in the last several years gone on trips with your husband throughout your marriage, right? Without kids.
Because y'all done only now because, like, we're going on one next month because my daughter's already in volleyball practice and games are starting up. And so we need to go see his parents and we're going to go without her. And we took a trip last year to do CME without any of the children. But the children are all grown now. So my youngest is 16 and she's driving. So now she can drive herself to volleyball and church. And so, yes, that's a very new development for us. And I will tell you, it was a little bit odd when we went to New Orleans for the CME, continuing medical education classes. We saw so many things that we wanted to share with the kids there. It was a little bit of a bummer not to have anybody there except it was nice having the two of us and we made memories together and took lots of pictures, but we kept seeing things like, Gabriel would love this or Abby would love this or, it's kind of, I'm going to be curious to see how you like it as your kids start aging out and getting married and having families of their own, which is wonderful, but it means that they're not there for your family
Oh, I
vacations.
just wrote an Instagram post about this. I'm like, I'm not a sentimental person.
Uh-huh.
Like naturally, I'm not always yearning for the baby days. I didn't weep at the thought of my oldest never
Hmm.
doing this cute thing again. I
Yes.
mean, I would appreciate it, but
Yes.
I wasn't clinging to it and saving every memento. The thing that has hit me like a ton of bricks coming back from Europe though is the idea that we will do these things and people will be missing and it just won't
Yes.
feel the same
Yes.
because
It
we're not all
doesn't feel the
there.
same. Yes. And I am very sentimental. So I keep actually a list, a do it now list of all the things that I want to enjoy to the fullest right now while I have the opportunity, and then a empty nest list of things that seem kind of interesting to me that I absolutely don't have time to do and certainly didn't when my kids were younger, that I think, boy, when the last one leaves, I am going to need some ideas to keep me busy. And so here's my long list of
Yeah, but tell us how
things.
many grandkids you have because I have a feeling
Oh, yes, yes. I have 20, soon to be 28.
that's amazing.
So 26 on the ground and 2 more expected by the end of the year. And in fact, one of the reasons I was a little bit late to your house today is right as I was leaving, one of the daughter-in-laws called to see if I could babysit, and I said, I'm sorry, I'm leaving. I can't do it. Call Abby. So,
Her Abby, not
yes,
me.
yes, yeah, not, yeah, I have an Abby too.
Don't call me.
Abby with a Y, and this one's IE. So,
Yeah. Well, and I love hearing your perspective because I've noticed this with you as trips have gone on. And this isn't necessarily on the topic of a village, but it maybe is helping to inform some moms that are thinking they have to have the village. But like you said, those children are going to grow up and they're not going to need you as much and
mhm.
they will become your village. That is the thing
Oh,
that I am
yes.
finding. And that's what's making me mourn the thought of there not being around in the future is that I truly, at this point in life, would rather go out for dinner with my daughters
Yes.
than skip that for most other friends who also have their
Yes.
families and are doing that. I mean,
Yes.
like, I'm
Yes.
not shunning them,
No.
but I, that's what I would rather do in many
Yes,
ways.
yes. I love hanging out with my and they do come back even after they marry and
Yes.
go away.
Yes.
They do come back, and so we do get to fellowship. And sometimes I just feel like taking out a notepad and writing down some of what they say because I just think they're such smart kids and
Well, they are. I've met her kids. They're
insightful.
very
I
smart and
just love
insightful and
I
sweet.
love visiting with them. But yes, so that it does. It changes and yeah, as much as you'd love to be able to freeze a moment in time, it just time marches on.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it really does. And I can tell that that's going to start affecting me more and more as my kids get steadier jobs and, love
mhm.
interests and get married and have all these things that are so good. And you love seeing them do that.
Yes. Uh-huh.
But in line with the topic at hand, be encouraged, especially if you have teeny tinies, that what feels like you really want to fast forward through now is truly the seeds being planted to have a village in your home.
Yes. Yes. Being consistent and not despising that day of small things and investing in them when they're young just pays such dividends. Truly, you will reap if you don't lose heart
Yeah,
and don't grow weary in doing good when your kids are little. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
It's not, you know, it's not a guarantee that every one of them is going to be your bestie or that
Mhm.
every season is going to be easy or that they're
Mhm.
always going to be your favorite people to be around in terms of like their actual behavior or
Mhm.
attitudes in that
Yes.
moment. But overall, you're still
Mhm.
investing in this, um, in eternal souls, like,
Yes.
which is the best.
Yes, it is. That the best use of my time.
Yeah.
Yes. And what's I going to say about that? Yeah, there's difficulties in each stage and
Sure.
age, but there are such wonderful things about each stage. Like when they're little, when they're infants, you get woken up at night, but you also get those newborn snuggles.
Yep.
So if you can, as much as possible, focus on the good parts of each stage, and then, trust that God will get you through the difficult parts.
Yeah, which is not a platitude coming from two women who between us have 22 children and have seen the Lord, quote, get us through the difficult parts. In the post that I wrote about this idea that like, just because you get that break does not necessarily mean that your patience grows. In fact, you might find that it is shrunk a little bit when you get back and go, oh, I had that break and now I don't have the break. And now there's all these children needing me. It's not necessarily the case. There are times of refreshment where you come back ready to go. There are other times where it's like, I think my hope was in that break and it didn't do the trick. I came back and the same things are frustrating or bothering me, or I still have to address them. I need to come up with a system for this, and it's still not fixed, and I still have to invest. And but I was basically saying the breaks are wonderful, but the Lord is the one that sustained us, and that what you said, He might want our godliness and our growth more than our desire for a break to be fulfilled. And I had a comment from someone who was miffed because they felt like, since I do have an invested mom, that I should preface any kind of encouragement to stick with godly principles like growth and sanctification and patience, even in the face of not getting what you want and all those things but I do have a mom that comes twice a week. And I feel like I've talked about that enough, like on this podcast, in my social media, in my books, like acknowledged it over and over again.
That's how people know that it is the case.
Right.
Because you talked about it.
Right. I've put that out there, but I want to tell you a little bit of backstory on that. And you mentioned it, and that is that my mom did not start working for us, which we did officially as like a paid position to keep her from having to keep working somewhere else. Because she was working ridiculous hours teaching high school English and then grading all weekend and just running herself ragged, honestly.
So that's a mutually beneficial
situation. That was the goal for sure. It was very helpful to us, but the goal was to keep her from having to go back to work. But that didn't happen for the first decade of my motherhood. And so this particular commenter was like, you've always had help with young children. And my husband actually traveled quite a bit. He still does multiple trips a year, but traveled for longer amounts and more frequently when my children were very young. So with my husband traveling quite a bit, we also built 2 houses during that period. And I think I tried to think back through some of the social interactions that we had during the 3 years total that we built houses. And the first time, I think that it was like, I think I saw friends maybe 6 times all year, maybe. Wow. It was just, there wasn't, it was just, it was what it was, and my mom was working full time. We lived in their second story, but like she was maxed out. A lot of solo parenting, my husband working at the house and working his day job and figuring it all out in between the cracks because he worked from home. And then, so I had a 10-year-old and I think 5 children underneath him, maybe 6, before my mom started working for us. And I really felt like that. I'd love to have more of a village, but Lord, you're teaching me a whole lot and like really compressing me, like the crucible was happening. That lesson that I was learning and that principle that I was talking about of like really that patience and that perseverance is learned through the pressing through moments, not in the breaks.
No,
usually
it's not.
Was impressed upon me really strongly in those first 10 years of only having small children, having my husband travel and build houses and having a mom who was my primary village, if any, who worked full time. I don't talk about that very much because I love to give her the credit that's due for being such a help and recognizing that incredible blessing that is having her in our life now. But that might give some perspective to some of the young moms that feel like, oh, well, she had this the whole time through. And that's not necessarily the case. And then just the idea that, and someone else in that same comment, kind of piggybacked and were like, oh yeah, anytime these moms are saying like the Lord's going to get you through and press through, they're just writing to you from a coffee shop.
Oh,
um, which I mean could be true, I guess, but
I don't even like hot coffee. You don't either.
well, maybe the coffee shop
Yeah.
wasn't the
I
point.
don't even like the smell of coffee, actually. So,
But maybe talk about this idea or this response that I feel like that exemplifies, which is kind of like that principle doesn't apply if I don't have your circumstances.
Well, nobody has anybody else's
True.
circumstances. Each of us have to learn to deal with the time and the responsibilities and the children and the husband that God has given us.
Yeah, so good.
So, um, but He's promised to be there with us. I don't know how to even address that question without appealing to a reliance on God, because I cannot fathom getting through all of it we've gotten through with raising 12 kids apart from that.
Mhm.
So it's not some cliche or that's life. That is how I survived.
Yeah.
So and if they don't want to believe that, if they think I'm just saying it because it sounds good, then I guess they're entitled to their opinion. But
Right. You can't change that perspective. I think one thing that I'm constantly trying to do is frame things in the way that the most people can hear it without watering down
yes,
truth.
yes,
And sometimes when you get feedback like that, it's hard because you're like, I'm trying to give you like the truth, the scriptural truth, the way it's affected me personally.
yes,
And then you get people that are like, well, must be nice or
yes,
good for you. And
yes,
it can be discouraging when you encounter people that choose to still take it as, well, if I had what you had,
yes.
even if they don't know the full story, then the scriptural principle would apply.
Hmm.
But I have to come back and remind myself, I can't. One, I can't reach everybody.
No.
Two, I can't convince anybody of anything. Only, and if they're Christians, only God's Holy Spirit can do
Yes,
that.
that's so true.
And three, I love what you said. You're like, it's true. It's just a fact. Like I
That's right.
wouldn't be here without it.
Yes,
Like I'm living proof
Yes.
is really essentially what
Yes.
you're saying.
Yes, it is. And you just have to do your part. I mean, as far as trying to communicate truths to others, some people are receptive and some aren't. And your obligation is just to speak truth, Abby. I appreciate the fact that you try to couch it in a way that the most people can identify with, but you are speaking truth, and it's not your responsibility for people to accept it.
Hmm.
That's really on them.
That's a good reminder.
You
I
know.
mean, I know it's true. I know
Yes.
it.
Uh-huh.
But it's still a good reminder.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So can you just, because I know people love to hear, even though your circumstances are no one else's circumstances, can you just talk through a little bit of your story as far as how close together your kids are, kind of your husband's responsibilities, like kind of some of your systems for getting through when you didn't have a village, when you did,
Yes.
how you created community? I think people would love to hear your perspective on this because I talk a lot on this podcast. And anytime I have a guest, they're always like, get them talking more. So I would love to hear kind of starting from young married. You don't have to do the whole
Yes.
exhaustive life experience, but
Yes. Okay. Well, we got married pretty young. A year after we had met. We met the day after he turned 19 and I turned 21. I'm 2 years older. And so the following year we married and we got pregnant 2 weeks into our honeymoon. So those babies started coming right away. And the first two were 16 months apart. And then we had a little bit of gap between number 2 and 3. So much of a gap. I think it was like maybe 28 months. So much of a gap that we thought, oh, I guess the Lord's just going to give us 2 children. And we canceled our maternity coverage. And then we promptly got pregnant with David. So anyway, most of them are about 2 years apart. And so for a quarter of a century, I was pregnant or nursing or both. And we've had Oh, Doug was not even finished with his bachelor's when we got married. And so we really were living on a shoestring. He worked 3 jobs our first year of marriage, and then he started medical school. And once you start medical school, you really can't hold down a job and do medical school. So we lived on school loans, which is why we garage sold so much and clothed our kids that way. And our Christmas presents and birthday presents and housewares and everything came from garage sales. And God provided for us so abundantly that way. And then school was pretty good. He found out that he could pay to get the notes from class. And so he did not always attend class. He would just read the notes because he could read a lot faster than he could listen to lecture. And he finished top of his class and the testing, at least, he just is very smart and capable and got he went to school right down the street in Dallas. So we were right down the street from my parents. And then he got a residency in Dallas also. So we lived for the first 10 years of our marriage about 4 blocks away from my parents. And so we did see them often. We would go over on Sunday afternoon without fail. And a lot of times we'd go over on Friday night when my mom got home too. And that poor woman would work all week and then we'd be on her doorstep, expecting to be fed and play games all, into the late night. And my dad too. My dad was, anyway, they were great parents and set a great example of dedicated to one another and to the children and excited about teaching. We weren't homeschooled. You were homeschooled, right?
I was, yeah.
I wasn't homeschooled, but my parents would have made great homeschoolers because they were so invested in our education beyond school. And so, anyway, they lived right down the street until he finished all of his training. Then we moved to Tyler, and he's been here ever since, working basically at the same hospital since 1987, nearly 30 years at the same place. So,
and you have 2 children with type 1 diabetes, don't
3.
you? You have 3.
I have 3.
Who is the third?
I
know John
John
and Daniel
and Joseph.
Okay, I thought there were
Joseph
3.
also has it. So, Jonathan was diagnosed at 22 months, which was really hard. You want to talk about hard? That was insanely hard, but God got us through it. And he's 38 with 10 kids of his own and doing great. And so God is good. And then Daniel and Joseph were both diagnosed in 2011. Joseph was 16 and Daniel was 6. Or no, he was 15. He was 15 and 6. Daniel was diagnosed right before Thanksgiving, and Joseph was diagnosed 4th of July weekend because John was our oldest was living in San Antonio at the time, and Doug was going to take a boys' trip to San Antonio to visit him because his wife was visiting her parents. And so it normally is a 5-hour trip, and it took them like 7 or 8 hours to get there because Joe needed so many potty breaks. And so Doug knew, this is not good. And tested his blood with Jonathan's glucometer when we got down there, when he got down there, and it was like 500.
So he had not really manifested symptoms before that.
He was a teen boy, so he was voraciously hungry all the time, which is, polyuria, polydipsia, polyphagia. They pee all the time, they're hungry and thirsty all the time. And so he was a teen. He didn't ask permission to go to the bathroom except when we were on the road.
Right.
I wasn't aware that he was peeing so much. And then thirsty, he'd just go get it himself. But I did know he was eating a lot and he was really thin. And I remember telling my husband before they got on the road, feed Joe something. He just was looking so thin.
Yeah.
I thought it was because he had shot up. When they grow really fast, sometimes their muscles. But obviously it was more than that. It was diabetes. So type 1, 3 of them, they're all real thin and fit and muscular, but 3 of the 12, that's like classic. They don't think it's a recessive trait, but they think there's like a predisposition to diabetes and environmental trigger. But
Interesting.
yeah.
Well, and I bring that up because, again, I feel like it's important to give perspective that you're not talking about Jennifer Flanders, supermom, who just popped out 12 kids, never had any struggle, always had all the help she needed. Her husband was present all the time. Everybody was healthy all the time. And that's why you've done what you've done. Genuinely, as her friend and someone that has known her well for the last right at 10 years. I think it's
only been 10 years.
It has only been 10 years, but it has been 10 years because I was pregnant with Honor when I started teaching at that co-op.
Oh my goodness.
And Honor
Theo
is 9 years old.
In my little, I mean, I had nursery for part of it.
Yeah. And he was only maybe,
and you could tell, I mean, this was, I barely knew you. This was even before, I think, maybe before we even started grading together, because your kids all favor, just like my kids all favor one another. And I saw Theo in nursery and I said, oh, that has to be a Halberstadt, because I had Della in fun science. So I knew that they had to be siblings. They favor so much.
Yeah, they really do look like, especially when they're younger.
I can't believe it's only been 10 years, Abby. I feel like I've known you forever.
That's true. Yeah. It's true. But I was just going to say, in the 10 years that I've known her, and being able to observe her family over and over again, she has exemplified, both one, the willingness to be someone else's village, because if you come away from this and you hear that we think that, having friends and having mentors and having support and having community and coming alongside and having the body of believers carry you through hard times is not a biblical concept and we don't care about it, then you've taken the wrong thing away from it. And Jennifer's willingness to be gracious and generous with her time and with her resources and welcome us into her home. Like, we would just troop over there. You know, all of my children were young at that point, because my oldest would have been 10 years old and all of my children weren't even here yet 10 years ago. And we would just go to your house and you would have watermelon and baked potatoes out, and just like everybody would play and her kids would take care of mine. So that was truly a beautiful example. And you were one of the first obvious answers to my decade-long prayer of, Lord, bring along someone who's going to cheer for me. And sorry, that sounds really self-aggrandizing. I wasn't praying, Lord, bring along someone that's going to cheer for me. But there was, I don't think I ever voiced that in a prayer, but there was a deep desire in my heart to be friends with people who were not in competition with me and resenting me.
Yes.
And so
that was a happy surprise.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Absolutely. And she's one of my biggest cheerleaders, always has been. You have always been like the one that extravagantly praised things and said, this is going to do so well. And I just looked at you like, what? Or what? Why do you think this? Turns out you've been right most of the time. So maybe I should have listened. So I think what you should hear us saying is, we're so grateful for the community that the Lord has provided when it has come along.
Yes. And we do recognize it as coming from the Lord, because when I say He gives us what we need, sometimes it is that community. Actually, He calls us to community. You know, He tells us not to forsake the assembling of ourselves together, as this is the habit of some, but to encourage one another. And all the more as you see the day drawing near. And so, obviously, that's part of it. The body of Christ, you know, we're all pulling together and different parts. And also, yes, I think that community and the village is a biblical concept, but I just want people to know that it is not an excuse to set aside your own responsibilities in raising your children. You know, you can't expect somebody else to do that job for you, because God has assigned it to you, and He didn't make a mistake when He did. He will equip you with everything you need to do a good job of raising those children through His strength and His grace. And sometimes that grace brings other people into your life, and sometimes it doesn't, because there's other lessons to be learned that are harder lessons. But
it makes me think of Elijah off by himself, being fed by the ravens. And it's just like, man, this is the wilderness. And he even concludes, I'm the only one that's left. And of course, the Lord's like, nope, you're not.
Mhm.
There are hundreds of others
Yes,
that will not bow the knee to Baal and are still
Mhm.
worshiping me. And that is really the biggest thing that made me want to have you on and talk about this and do this podcast is I do think I see moms, not just young moms, but moms almost becoming convinced that they are incapable of carrying on unless they have this
Mhm.
almost nebulous idea.
Mhm.
Or they imagine if they had a greater degree of it,
Yeah.
or if they just had what Abby Halberstadt had, or what Jennifer Flanders had, or what their neighbors had, then they would be equipped enough. And while we aren't arguing that we're grateful for what support our mothers have provided or our friends have provided, you and I started this community called Grace Girls together that we've been able to do for 3 years. I haven't been able to be as involved the last year or two, but a bunch of moms that are just willing to open their homes and
Yes.
host every bit of it, like
Yes.
require no one to pay anything or bring anything. You just set things out and you just show up with your daughters and
Yes.
enjoy it.
It's been wonderful.
That's such a important concept. It's been such a good thing for our community. But I feel this kind of urgency to encourage moms that if yours doesn't look like hers, if you don't have a Grace Girls, if you don't have a Jennifer Flanders, if you don't have a mom that's not working full time, if you know, and or can come to your house a couple times a week because you're able to bless her financially and that works for both of you, or whatever, or feed you on Sundays, and you're so focused on the lack, you might actually miss the ways that the Lord is providing for you to make it through.
Yes. And also the ways the Lord is preparing you to be that for somebody
Yes,
else.
that's exactly the next point that I wanted to make.
Yes, because it is through the difficulties that you learn those lessons that you can then use to encourage other moms. So I would make that my goal to learn the lessons that God is teaching you well enough that you can share them with other moms and be an encouragement to them someday.
Yes.
Because eventually you will be in that Titus 2 position of older mom, and your children will be older and grown up and eventually gone. And you'll be able to do for others what you had wished was done for you, you know?
Yeah.
That's
And I see young moms who are willing to do this as well, or just in between moms, you know, the ones that don't have kids out of the house or anybody that's quite old enough to drive or things like that, that are just saying like, you know what? Nobody's coming to me. Cause I do see some of an expectation that it takes a village. So there's a lot of funny like memes where it's like me, there's like someone looking through the blinds, you know, me looking for my village.
Yes.
And it is funny. And I understand it's lighthearted. But if you look at what's actually happening, it's someone inside their own home with the doors and the windows and the blinds closed, peeking through them, looking for the cavalry coming.
Yes.
When scripture, in a lot of ways, when it's asking us to love God and love our neighbors, is asking us to throw those blinds open and those doors open and potentially be kind of uncomfortable with who we allow in. They may not immediately click with us. And the goal may be less about our being given a break and being built up and more our pouring into other people from a cup we thought was completely empty, but the Lord has filled up with something supernatural that we shouldn't even have given our circumstances.
Absolutely.
And then being blessed as a result of it.
That is so true. Yes, I can certainly remember times when that was the case, you know? And you can always find somebody that is more in need than you are that you can bless. And it is a blessing to be a blessing. So I think that's great advice, Abby.
Well, and one more thing I want to touch on before we sign off, and that is if you are wanting a village, but there's almost like a criteria or a list of application requirements for your village for it to qualify and be what you want, you may find yourself very, very Alone, I mean, might be literally what happens. You just don't have anybody because no one is up to scratch. But you might find yourself frustrated and missing opportunities for friendship because it's, they don't have kids your kid's age, or they aren't the same age as you are, but they're not the mentor age, and there's a lot of disdain, at least on social media. I don't necessarily encounter this much with young women that I know, or any age of woman that I know that I interact with personally. But there's a lot of disdain for the older generation's way of parenting.
Yes.
That creates a lot of tension from, I want her to come. Like, I remember a friend of mine telling me about a friend of hers. So this is like third-hand information. And she said that they were in a group chat together, and the friend of hers was really frustrated that her mother-in-law was not providing more support, but she was also extremely critical of the ways her mother-in-law was providing the support that she had. I may be a mother-in-law in the next, not too long from now, who knows, decade or less. And it is my hope and prayer that I would be able to be involved in my children's lives, and then daughters-in-law, sons-in-law's lives in a way that is a blessing to them without having to completely neuter who I am.
Yes.
Have you dealt with this at all?
I've had great relationships with my in-laws.
You are
so far.
one of
I'm
the
really
most gracious
thankful
people that
for-
I've ever met, so I can see how that would be.
So, and I've been amazed at how on the same page those in-laws are with.
And you mean daughters-in-laws and sons-in-law,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, I have one son-in-law who's wonderful, and
that's right.
and
Only one of your girls is married. That's
only
right.
one of
But
my
you are
girls.
very boy heavy. You have 8 boys.
Yes, 8 boys.
Yes.
5 of whom are married.
Yes.
And then 4 girls, 1 of whom's married so far. But we keep praying that God will send somebody for those others. Not the youngest yet. She's 16.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe not that one for a while. But I mean, we are praying for her already, too, because, 20 years of prayer for the other ones still has yet to bring along the right one. But anyway,
You've had good relationships with with daughters-in-law and receptivity from them, you're saying?
Yes, they've been awesome. I'm thankful. So, and what you said a little bit ago about looking out the window and having a criteria, I would just caution against maybe looking at every friendship as what can this do for me, but actually think about how can I pour into this person. You really do get so much by pouring into others. But you may not have that bandwidth. If you're pouring into your children, you may not have a lot of bandwidth for that kind of thing. But a checklist and thinking, what am I going to get out of this relationship if I pursue it, is probably not the most healthy way to start a friendship.
No. Well, and definitely not the healthiest way. I think secular sources would agree with that. Like psychologically speaking, if we are only self-focused, it becomes a form of narcissism. Like, just fulfill my needs. I am paramount. But a much milder version of that can seep through, where you're not a narcissist. You're just not recognizing maybe that you have more to offer than you think.
Yes.
I get moms that ask me, like, how do you know what your strengths are? How do you, I just feel like I don't have much to offer, and I'm in this season of small children, and I feel so sucked dry. And as you say, I think that what you just said was really wise. Of like, you don't have to have like this wide array of friendships and social events on your calendar, especially when so much of you is being poured in at home. Those investments at home we will say it again, they pay dividends. They reap such benefits for you and your children and your community when your children grow out into it. Enforcing things isn't always great either.
Yes. But I do believe in approaching people. Like, I mean, people have come to me and asked questions, and I'm open for that.
Yeah.
And I know that my daughters have gone to other people and said, will you mentor me?
Yep.
So I think that there's a place for that also, rather than looking when are they coming for me if you pursue it. I can see that.
Right.
And so I do see value in, here's an older woman, I'd like to learn from her. Oh, that was the other thing I was going to say. You were talking about not wanting to, younger moms sometimes being critical of older moms' parenting methods.
Sure.
A lot of times they want the results that the older moms got, but they don't want to use the methods.
Yeah.
They want to have the pleasant, cheerful, obedient children, but they don't ever want to say no to their kids, that kind of thing.
Right.
There's a disconnect because they have bought into this kind of parenting that's being espoused that is really not going to give them the results that any mom would want, I would not think. I mean,
Sure.
there's a lot of parents that think I could never have 12 because the way they're raising their one or two is so exhausting because of the parenting method they're,
Yeah. Yeah. I
like-
absolutely have heard exactly from like emails that describe exactly what you're
Yes.
talking about.
Uh-huh.
You have too, I'm
yes,
sure.
absolutely. And it pains me because I think, yes, you're trying to do something that is not ever going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. Moms that are messaging me and essentially saying that they are bending over backwards to emotionally validate every
Yes.
single preference, frustration,
Yes.
and they're running themselves ragged.
Yeah, no wonder they feel like they need a village, because that is exhausting to even think about. This, I don't know. I love my kids and I love being around my kids, but if I had tried to raise them with never saying no and validating every emotion and some of the things that I see being touted on social media, I think, one, I never would have had 12.
Yeah.
And two, I would have been wanting a week-long break also. Like I love being with my kids, but they're great kids.
Yeah, and I can vouch for that. They are
Yeah.
enjoyable to be around kids,
Yeah.
and
but they're also normal kids. I
Sure,
mean,
yeah.
they still, they have sin natures just like
Yeah.
their mama and their daddy do. But God's ways of training up children are so much better than anything the world comes up with.
Preach.
Yeah.
That's a good note to end on, I think. I think we covered like a wide range of topics, and I always prefer these conversational style
Yes.
podcasts to something where it's like, oh, here's the next point we're going to make.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to push back against this idea that without this, you can't be a good mom, because I think we would both agree that ideally you have intergenerational support.
Yes.
Ideally, you have close friendships that are safe, for lack of a better term. That's a little bit of a buzzword, but that are not competitive and somehow just feel like there's friction constantly.
Yes.
You have support from your husband, and you guys are pulling together in the same direction and truly co-parenting to the glory of God.
Yes.
Like, my goodness, those are all ideal situations. But I have several friends that come to mind that don't have all of those boxes checked.
Yes.
And they are still showing that they are invested in their families and that they're not expecting to be saved from their motherhood by anyone else.
Yes.
Which,
yes, I've known people that have contended with really difficult situations and circumstances and still done a beautiful job of it by God's grace.
Yeah, godliness with contentment is great gain.
It is.
So that's our encouragement to you.
Yes.
We actually do know what it's like to be required to choose contentment when it would have been much easier, or we might have been struggling with our circumstances in that moment that did not feel like something we wanted to stay content with for a long time. I doubt you wanted Doug's, 120 hours a week to go
It only
on
lasted
forever.
a year.
Yeah, only a year. Yeah, no big deal. And I mean, I wouldn't really prefer to do another 2-year-long build, mostly solo parenting with very little community, with my husband working a day job and being gone all the time. Like that was it mattered for a season, and it was the right decision for a season, and we worked together as a family, but like I probably wouldn't choose it again,
Although you
Yes, no, we are doing another build, but it's different,
Yes. And your kids are older.
Yes, that's a huge. They're going to be helpful,
learn and help, and
yeah. I mean, the different stages, the amount that it makes a difference for my kids to be older, even if they're not doing anything for me, because I think what immediately leaps into people's minds is they're older, therefore they are taking all these things off your plate.
Yes.
That's true sometimes. Like my oldest daughter loves to cook, loves to cook to the point that she's like, what's for dinner? Because I was planning on making this.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, great. I didn't ask her to do that, but yes, ma'am, you may go ahead and do that. So yes, there are moments like that, but just the difference in age where the mental load of wiping bottoms or
nursing
babies or fixing squabbles or getting them dressed or bathing them physically, that's different makes the stage very, very different and feel less like it's going to be, as draining as the last round was.
Yes.
It feels much more doable, even though last time it was very much so like, well, we'll get through it because we have to, and the Lord will be there and it'll be okay. Any words of encouragement you want to leave with moms about the Lord as their strength and shield while also community being good? Because that's our ultimate point.
You've pretty much said that all. Yes, the Lord is good. He is able to carry you through the hardest seasons of motherhood. And they're not all hard. And not all of the hard is hard. There's still some wonderful joys to be found even in the midst of the hard. So I would encourage you to look for the good parts. Focus on those. Pray for help from the Lord, first and foremost, in molding your heart and, conforming you to the image of Christ as you mother these little ones, because that's really what's most important, is modeling the Father's love for us to your children. And He will give you what you need, both in terms of community and fortitude, if you look to Him.
Amen. We will end with that. Thank you so much for being here, Jennifer.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I love the conversations, and we always talk before and after this, and I love that. But I love that you're sharing your experience and your wisdom and your encouragement. You are genuinely, like I said this earlier, but one of the most gracious people that I've ever met. She doesn't ever stray from truth. I remember times when I have said things that you're like, well, Abby, God's word says this. And it wasn't that I was saying it didn't. No. It was just kind of like, man, you're like, but I mean, you can prevaricate all you want, but like God's word says this. Yes. And I appreciated that she would just say that directly with a smile on her face. It wasn't, I know your circumstances are really hard, and in this case, you might be able to get around. No, God's word says this. So that's going to be the answer from both of us every time. And we pray that you are encouraged by this conversation and have a great rest of your week.
If you enjoyed the MS for Mama podcast, I would be so honored if you would subscribe and follow along, maybe share with friends, or even leave a review. And if you want more content on motherhood and biblical responses to cultural issues, be sure to follow along on Instagram at m.is.for.mama.